Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jung-hyun. Let's now meet our panelists. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk, great to have you back, and Dr. Pong Young-sik. Thanks for coming back. Now here's a look at our first topic of discussion for this week.
Just about a month after carrying out its fourth nuclear test, North Korea went forward with a long-range rocket launch. According to South Korea's Agency for Defense Development, the space launch vehicle for Gwanmyeong-song was almost identical in external features to the Eunha-3 rocket launched in 2012. The agency also said the satellite has achieved stable orbit, but data have not yet been transmitted back to Earth. This is why observers have pointed out the rocket launch is in fact a cover for the North to test long-range missile technology. The rocket launch was covered heavily by foreign media, many of which put forward analysis that Pyongyang is working to gain recognition as a nuclear state. With tensions running high on the peninsula, the day after the rocket launch, a North Korean patrol boat briefly crossed over the de facto maritime border with the South in the West Sea before retreating. Seoul's Parliamentary Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee, in response, adopted a resolution condemning the rocket launch. It also called for stronger national security measures while vowing to work with the government and the international community in taking countermeasures against the North. Pyongyang's recent provocations have fired up tensions not only on the peninsula, but in the surrounding region. Where is the North headed, and what are its hidden ambitions? Eyes will remain on future developments unfolding on the Korean Peninsula.
North Korea's long-range rocket launch dominated headlines throughout the week here in the South and also across the world. Now, the launch took place just one day ahead of the Lunar New Year Seoul holiday. What went through your mind when you first heard the news?
Well, when I heard the news about long-range rocket launch, I was very sad. There are several reasons, but one of the major reasons why I felt sad was, well, to launch the rocket, it cost about the $900 million. I think it's a huge amount of money, isn't it? And actually, this is the money enough to provide food to North Korean people for 1 year. Considering the living conditions in North Korea, I think I'm very sorry to hear this news.
What were your thoughts, Dr. Pong?
Well, first, I thought that North Korean leadership had an impeccable sense of timing to ruin everybody's holiday. And my friends in the United States also expressed the same sentiment because they were just one day before the Super Bowl. So North Koreans do not really seem to care about how other people think of their holidays and celebrations. And I'd like to second what Professor Shin said, that it costed North Korean people $900 million for every rocket experiment. And as a matter of fact, that North Korea launched a missile in April 13 of 2012, which only lasted 154 seconds. And it was total failure. Basically, North Korean leadership burnt $900 million in the air for less than 3 minutes, which could have fed the entire population for the entire year. So, which signifies how determined the leadership is to achieve the ultimate strategic goal, which is to make North Korea as a nuclear state.
I think we should first try to establish what we should call this. Pyongyang claims it was a satellite launch. Others call it a cover for a long-range missile test. What would you call it?
Well, Juliet would say that what's in the name, right? But it's a clear violation of the UN Security Council Resolution 2087, which prohibits any kind of launching activity by North Korean government, whether it is purportedly for the commercial or peaceful purposes or military use. This satellite technology is for dual usage, so it can be easily converted into military weapons. And North Korea's satellite is a three-staged rocket, so which can be easily converted into the long-range intercontinental missiles. So regardless of how you call it, how North Koreans call it, is in clear violation of UN Security Council resolution, which China and Russia also endorsed in 2012.
Well, Dr. Bong alluded to the timing of the event a little earlier. But the launch window that North Korea had initially given to the International Maritime Organization was between February 8th and 25th. But then on the 6th, the North brought forward and shortened the time frame to between 7th and 14th. The actual launch took place on the 7th. There's a lot of speculation as to why the launch date has been moved forward.
Well, they conducted nuclear bomb tests in January to commemorate the birthday of the current North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And then in February, as we know well, February 16th was the birthday of the former North Korean leader, actually the father of the current North Korean leader, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un's father. Before, his birthday, they wanted to arrange some event to draw the attention of the whole North Korean people, and in some sense, they wanted to commemorate his birthday.
Could it have also been because of the fact that there were lots of global events, especially in the U.S., the Super Bowl that Dr. Bong mentioned earlier.
Yeah, maybe.
To get the most attention from the world.
I think so. And then in the middle of the vacation, long holidays, when they conducted something, I think they can easily draw the attention from the people. If they have draw the attention from the people, I think then they can spread transfer their messages to the people in the world. I think that can be one of the reasons why they launched the long-range rocket on the 7th.
Another factor that may embolden North Korean leadership to go ahead with a missile test only 1 month after its fourth nuclear test is the absence of international sanctions from the United Nations. Think about it. It has been more than a month since North Korea went ahead with a fourth nuclear test, but UN Security Council failed to produce any type of resolution to punish North Korea. So North Korean leadership must have thought that we don't have to worry about anything, that international society is clearly divided. They cannot punish us effectively, so we can just go ahead with another way to strengthen our nuclear capability by launching this rocket / satellite.
We'll talk more about the international community's response in just a bit. In the meantime, though, as you said, last month North Korea conducted its fourth nuclear test. This month it launched a rocket. It looks like North Korea is stepping things up in terms of the provocations. What would be the reason for that?
Well, it is determined to achieve the ultimate goal, which is to become nuclear state, so that next time when it's dealing with United States for possible exit from the current crisis, then it wouldn't be focused on denuclearization of North Korea, but it'll be framed as a disarmament talk, that North Korea may abandon its nuclear weapon programs in exchange for the United States and other countries granting North Korea peace treaty that officially terminate the Korean War. So North Korea is not so much interested in bargaining with the United States for its nuclear weapons program unless the top price is something that is satisfactory to its standards.
Well, there are analysts who are saying that we can expect further provocations in the coming months. There are some important anniversaries and political events coming up in North Korea as well.
Well, many experts worry about the North Koreans' attack against South Korea, particularly in May, because it is scheduled to hold the Communist Party convention. So I think before having that events in May, maybe in the same reasons which I explained already, they can, they wanted to draw the attention from the people by arranging something very provocative things.
There's also Kim Il-sung's birthday coming up in April as well.
And then I think that will be a high possibility for us to see those kind of things in the coming months, I think.
Right. I mean, spring has been always the most dangerous season every year because, that's when the joint military exercises by North Korean military and the U.S. forces in South Korea take place, including the Ulchi Guardian exercise and the Fall Eagle. So even without the international pressure in the aftermath of North Korea's nuclear test and missile launch, it would have been very dangerous season anyway.
If I had one thing more, actually, by launching long-range rocket this month, well, there will be some changes in the relations, in the balance of power between among the big countries, neighboring countries around the Korean Peninsula. Particularly, maybe North Korea will get more, what can I say, rooms to control the relationship with the China. I mean, it means that under the previous conditions, actually, North Korea seemed to get the heavy burden whenever they try to do something, which means that North Korea was not free from the what's called intervention or influences of China. But by conducting the nuclear test, but by launching the long-range rockets, I think unlike their expectation, China did not show very aggressive responses to the North Korean actions, which means that North Korea could get some confidence in doing something, regardless of the responses of the mainland China. So which means that maybe they will consider making more activities, provocative activities, ignoring the responses of the mainland Chinese government, I think. So I think this is another reason why we can expect more provocative actions conducted by North Korean government in the coming months, I think.
Well, the UN Security Council convened an emergency meeting shortly after the rocket launch, condemning the act and calling it a serious violation of UN resolutions. Let's take a look at some of the statements that have come out of that meeting. So the Council has agreed to adopt a new resolution which will inevitably include additional sanctions. Now the question is, how far will they go? Perhaps not surprisingly, the tone from China and Russia hasn't been as aggressive.
Well, I'm afraid we shouldn't expect too much out of this new resolution in the UN Security Council because, as you said, that Russia and China are not on the same page with other countries in terms of pressuring North Korea all the way to the brink point after these two nuclear and missile tests. Because North Korea poses a great deal of headache and problem to these countries, that's for sure. And China's leadership was clearly humiliated by reckless behavior by Kim Jong-un's regime, despite repeated warnings issued by Beijing. But at the same time, pressuring North Korea will undermine Russia's and China's strategic interest because they are competing against the United States in Northeast Asia. So I don't think China and Russia will be on board in joining United States and its allies in terms of pressuring and punishing Kim Jong-un regime to a very severe degrees.
Well, some have questioned whether any new economic or financial sanctions at this point would make a difference. What do you think?
On the short-term basis, not very much, because that in 1913 or in the last several years ago, quite for a long time, North Korea was under sanctions, and they, in other words, they have experienced the difficulties caused by economic sanctions. So, according to some experts, they said that North Korea got some so-called learning lessons, so they could manage the difficulties caused by the economic sanctions. But I think I want to pinpoint this another point, which is, I think, very important. When the North Korean regime, in order to revitalize their economy, they very slowly open their doors to the foreign investors. Because of the sanctions, I think their plan will be slowed down. I think unlike the expectations, they will face the more difficulties, because that once the North Korean people taste so-called the higher living conditions, so when they return to the previous living conditions, I think the difficulties which North Korean people will have would be more serious than before. I think this will be the point which I want to underline.
Well, they say that the North Korean regime has proven to be the type that is most resistant to international sanctions. It's already very isolated. Now, Seoul has taken its strongest action to date by announcing a unilateral shutdown of the Kaesong industrial complex, officially identifying the park as a source of cash for North Korea's weapons programs. This was the first time that Seoul actually came out and said that. Do you think this was the right step to take, though, shutting down the complex?
Whether this is the right step to take, I would just say that there are pros and cons, but at this juncture, Park Geun-hye administration must have thought that it is absolutely necessary action for several reasons. One is that North Korea should not just get away without properly punished for its action. Second, there is an enormous strategic pressure for other countries to cut off the inflow of cash that can be used to manufacturing and developing nuclear warheads and ICBMs. So shutting down Kaesong Industrial Complex, in which 124 South Korean companies are in operation, with 55,000 North Korean workers. It has been the major source of hard cash, because everything is paid in US dollars, and North Korean government took about at least 70% of the North Korean workers' wages. So annual income for North Korean government, for instance, last year amounted to 120 million US dollars, which constituted about 9% of the total government revenue. So cutting off that inflow of significant amount of hard cash in the hands of North Korean leadership was thought of necessary to be tackled. But more important points are these two reasons. One is that South Korean government must have found that it is necessary to take the concerted actions with United States and Japan, because US and Japan decided to take their own unilateral economic sanctions on North Korea. For instance, United Senate just passed bills that would allow the administration to go ahead with a secondary boycott for companies doing business with North Korea. And Abe administration of Japan also decided to go back to the old time prior to North Korea and Japan agreed to ease the sanctions so that they would move on to with the abduction issues by limiting the amount of money to be transferred to North Korea. So when United States and Japan are moving ahead with their own independent sanction measures, South Korean government cannot just sit still and saying that we have to keep the Kaesong industrial complex, and we have to ask you to take into account the particular aspects of inter-Korean relations or aspiration for peaceful unification. That would put South Korean government in a very awkward position.
Will this have a significant economic impact on North Korea, though?
Well, as Dr. Bong explained, in fact, from the Kaesong industrial complex, North Korea has gained quite huge amount of money. But the real problem which will they have because of shutdown of the Kaesong Industrial Complex is they should change their economic policy, which means that to revitalize their economy, they wanted to open or establish some special economic zones, and they wanted to attract foreign direct investment in those industrial zones. But symbol of the Kaesong Industrial Complex has been the symbol of those kind of policies. But because of the shutdown of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, who will make a foreign direct investment in North Korea? I think so that will be a fatal blow to North Korean regime to achieve economic development. So I think to erase the image as the very dangerous countries or not appropriate destination for the foreign direct investment, I think it will take a time, and then in some sense it will be almost impossible because North Korea has been very notorious or has been one of the most dangerous places for foreign investors. So I think the shutdown of Kaesong Industrial Complex seems to be very, very important for the future of the North Korean economy, I think.
There is another reason why shutdown of Kaesong Industrial Complex will be devastating to Kim Jong-un government. North Korean government has been earning enormous amount of money by exporting laborers who had been subjected to a kind of a slave labor in violation of International Labor Organization standards. But by doing so, by exporting about 100,000 workers working in abhorrent conditions with extremely low wages, North Korean government has been earning every year about at least $300 million. But by shutting down the Kaesong Industrial Complex, which has been subject of controversy, whether South Korean government has been rather turning blind eye on North Korea's violation of basic international labor standards. Now South Korean government is free from that accusation, but it sets a standard to other countries like China, Russia, and Middle Eastern countries, which have been hosting North Korean workers in violation of the international labor standards. These countries are now under pressure to follow the international norms and standards, so that there is a good chance that in the long run, these countries will gradually reduce the number of North Korean workers in operation in their own territories, which will reduce the amount of cash under the control of Kim Jong-un government.
In the meantime, South Korean companies that are doing business there won't be able to avoid some sort of losses.
Definitely. North Korean government and these companies will have lost about $1 billion. They have jointly invested in building of the infrastructures, roads, and facilities. But these companies will be benefited by speedy and wide-range measures imposed by the Park Geun-hye administration to minimize their business loss. The Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund and the related laws guarantee that these companies' business loss will be covered up to $6 million per company, or 90% of the loss. So we'll see.
Now, North Korea has responded by designating the Kaesong Industrial Park as a zone under military control. It has said it is going to freeze South Korean assets there as well. Are these moves somewhat expected?
It was somewhat expected, and I think South Korean government is well determined and prepared to deal with such an emergency situation. And that is part of the statement issued by the Ministry of Unification, that South Korean government is ready to take every necessary measure to minimize the loss of South Korean companies by mobilizing the part of the Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund, which is in the scale of $1.1 billion, and at least 10% of that fund can be used to provide insurance for the South Korean companies doing business in Kaesong Industrial Complex.
If I add one thing more about the North Koreans' decision, well, in fact, by taking this action, they will not avoid some responsibility. I mean, maybe from the foreign direct investors' point of view, actually North Korea will be no more appropriate places to make foreign direct investment into, because the political stability and the government policies to deal with the economic zones, I think it will be the most important factors for the foreign investors whenever they consider making foreign direct investment or not. So in this context, this decision can be a fatal blow to North Korean economy itself.
Amidst all this, THAAD talks are quickly gaining momentum. Seoul and Washington will begin official talks this month over the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system on the Korean Peninsula. Here's a look at where Seoul and Washington stand on this.
주한미군의 사드 배치 가능성에 대한 공식 협의의 시작을 한미동맹 차원에서 결정하였습니다.
We'd like to see this move as quickly as possible, but we're beginning the consultations now in the coming days with the South Koreans, and we expect that this will move in an expeditious fashion.
Some say the rocket launch has given Seoul and Washington the pretext to officially kick off THAAD talks that had already been going on under the table. What are your thoughts?
Personally, I say I'm for the deployment of THAAD on the Korean Peninsula because that this is the matter of life and death for Korean people. Well, some politicians said that we have our Korean version of the missile defense system, something like that. But I think, as far as I know, it can be realized after 2 decades, or at least 1.5 decades. So during this time, what can you do for us? I think so. Because of THAAD, the deployment of THAAD on Korean soil, maybe the relationship with the neighboring country, particularly with China, could be deteriorated. But I think it's necessary costs which you have to pay. I mean, we put the first priority on the life of the all Korean people. So I think I'm very for the deployment of THAAD on the Korean soil.
What do you make of the timing of the announcement?
Timing of announcement is impeccable because Park Geun-hye administration doesn't seem to just come up one day in the morning and decide to begin this discussion with Washington about potential deployment of THAAD. The potential deployment of THAAD has been in the media for a long time, and we do not have anybody else but North Korea to blame that Washington and Seoul are now on the same page to push ahead with a very difficult but necessary agenda. And we cannot have too many or too much defense systems. You're talking about North Korea armed with nuclear weapons, let alone its 5th largest standing army and other artilleries aiming at entire South Korean territory. So although that system, which is designed to capture and destroy incoming missiles in the range of 40 to 150 kilometers in the air, may not capture every single missile, but in combination with other measures such as PAC-3 and the kill chain, which is designed to destroy North Korea's artillery and missiles before they were launched. South Korean national security will be a little bit in the better stage. That is the most important consideration for South Korean government and its people. It is not China or the United States or any other country that should have the main say in this.
Well, public opinion remains divided over whether the anti-missile system should be deployed to the south. Let's hear what people have to say about it.
배치하는 문제를 미국과 협의를 개시했다는 것은 상당히 신속하고 우리 국민들한테 우리의 안보 방위 태세에 대해서 안심을 시켜줄 수 있는 하나의 좋은 조치다.
미사일 발사하고 나니까 왜 사드를 공식화시켜요? 이게 우리 정부의 진정성이 없는 거란 말이에요. 진정성이. 중국이 의심하지 않습니까?
아무래도 북한이 최근에 미사일도 발사를 하고 해서 아무래도 방어적인 차원에서 꼭 필요하지 않나 생각합니다.
한마디로 저는 잘못된 결정이라고 봐요. 장기적으로 볼 때 우리가 중국을 무시해서도 안 되고 현실적으로 봐도 그렇고 뭐 경제뿐 아니라 안보 모든 면에서 중국을 무시할 수 없는 거예요 지금. 그게 현실이란 말이에요.
Japan is also considering THAAD to beef up its defenses. But as we all know, China is strongly against any expansion of the U.S. missile defense program in this region. And there are already concerns that South Korea-China ties will be strained as a result. Are these valid concerns in your opinion?
They are valid concerns, but at the same time, you have to consider the overall picture of national security and foreign relations. I mean, every decision involves opportunity cost. Some relationship will be lost or even extremely strained, but that may be, they should be considered as a necessary cost to move ahead with a new policy to better deal with your national security crisis. There is a saying that China is extremely disappointed with the Park Geun-hye administration despite the persistent peace offensive under the Xi Jinping administration for the past 3.5 years. But we can also say that Park Geun-hye administration has so many reasons to be disappointed with the Xi Jinping government of China. I mean, she went to join the controversial military parade in September 3rd in Beijing as the only country representing so-called the Free West in order to court Chinese government closer to South Korean side when it comes to North Korea's military threat. But it was a Xi Jinping government failing to return the hotline calls by Blue House and the Ministry of National Defense. So there was not so much trust that Chinese government is entitled to complain about being lost because of South Korea's action. If China is genuinely interested in cultivating a good security partnership with South Korea, then it must have a very clear idea that the problem is North Korea and China has to do something effectively about the problem.
So as mentioned earlier, Seoul and Washington will begin working level talks to work out the details of that deployment, including the cost and location. We are getting some rough estimates, though.
According to the report, actually, USA will take charge of the deployment of the THAAD. It is estimated about the 1 trillion won, which is the equivalent to about $900 million, to deploy one set of THAAD. We do not know how many THAADs will be deployed on the Korean soil, but anyway, this is the rough calculation about the cost for the deployment of one THAAD on the Korean soil. And the USA will take care of this one. And then Korean side, we will provide some land and the necessary administrative preparations for the deployment of the THAAD on Korean soil. And according to the report, maybe Pyeongtaek is one of the places where the THAAD will be deployed, and another U.S. military camp nearby DMZ actually is emerging as one of the other candidate land and places for the deployment of THAAD on Korean soil.
I think there are concerns from the public that, yes, the U.S. might provide what is initially needed to deploy THAAD, but then Seoul might be pressured into paying for more than what Seoul is entitled to pay, that is for site and infrastructure.
Right. It's about your national security, and national security costs the money, precious taxpayers' money. So it'll be a very controversial political topic, especially this year when we have National Assembly election in April. But at the same time, the effectiveness of missile defense system is only heightened when it is combined with other missile defense systems in neighboring countries such as Japan, because you share intelligence reports and on-time analysis of the trajectory of the incoming missiles. So interoperability is very important for the success of the THAAD system if it is deployed inside South Korea.
Well, North Korea's rocket launch and South Korea's THAAD talks with the U.S. are driving a bigger wedge between the U.S. and Japan on one side and China and Russia on the other. There are concerns that Northeast Asia could spiral into a new Cold War. Let's talk about the dynamics surrounding the Korean Peninsula. So in light of the recent development, there are obviously growing calls for South Korea to forge stronger ties with the U.S. and Japan. Is this the only option for Seoul right now?
Is it only option for Seoul? For a while, the answer is yes, because we are living in an era in which geopolitics has returned. I used to make this joke in my class on international relations that because these young generations do not have any personal memory of the Cold War. So these students would think that, oh, there was a First World War and there was a Second World War, and in between there was a Cold War. But now Cold War has returned as a very cruel reality to young and old generations in South Korea and other countries. There is a growing divide between U.S., Japan, and South Korea on one hand, especially after Abe administration of Japan and Park Geun-hye administration of South Korea agreed to put in the back burner about the comfort women issue. So they are determined to move past the historical and territorial issues in order to forge a higher level of security cooperation between them and with the United States. And China and Russia have been very negatively but aggressively reacting to this development. So at least for a while, I'm not saying that it'll be a permanent feature of Northeast Asia, Seoul's option is very limited. It is about making the best realistic conditions for your national security in face of new stage of nuclear and missile capability demonstrated by North Korea.
So with the rift widening in Northeast Asia, what kind of problems do you foresee down the line?
Well, as we know very well, for over the last several years, the economic relationship between Korea and China has been strengthened very rapidly. But this morning I read an article written by one of Chinese the journalists. He said that that is the friendship between leaders, well, which means that, as Dr. Bong pointed out, the national interest, we put the first priority on national interests. So I think there will be changes in the balance of power in the region. Well, particularly because of the security issues, we will reunite it with the USA and Japan, and then North Korea will get closer to the China in some sense. As I explained before, North Korea will have more they can choose their stance with more the rights, regardless of responses of China, because that they confirm that China will not treat them with the full hostility. So I think the North Korea will just try to plan do something new for their own national interests. And then how about Korea? Well, Korea will just try to strengthen the cooperation with the USA and Japan, which means that it can be the signal giving us the quite the negative impact on the relationship with China. So I think for the time being, there will be a new some changes in the balance of power among these 6 countries in the region, I think.
In the meantime, should we be worried about a possible arms race?
Right, there will be a part of this rise of geopolitical competitions in Northeast Asia. That's very unfortunate reality in the making. We have to wait and see how far these countries are determined to go.
Well, thank you both for sharing your thoughts with us today. As we close, if you could tell us what we should take away from our discussion today.
Well, this is my wish. I want to see the unification in the near future in the Korean Peninsula.
Okay, Dr. Paul.
I thought of this term in international politics, tyranny of a small power. North Korea, albeit not a big power, can cause big troubles for even big powers in the world.
Certainly a power to be reckoned with. Well, thank you both very much. That is all for this edition of News Inside. Thank you for watching. We will be back with more next week.